Why am I clapping, you ask? That is the sound of 2020 coming to a close, that we have made it through 2020. Thank God! 2021 is right around the corner. We can forget about this shit here. Thank you, God. I'm going crazy right now. So if you haven't already guessed by the title of this video, this is my list for the best movies of 2020. I considered doing 15, but I was able to narrow it down to 10. Obviously, this isn't going to be full reviews. This is just my opinion. Your list is going to differ from yours. It's kind of just summing up how I feel about the movies. I might talk about some movies more than others, and I'll try not to keep it too long, but just keep that in mind. These aren't reviews. Another thing to keep in mind with this list is that, like I said, my list is going to be different than yours. We're obviously going to agree or disagree on a lot of these choices. That's totally fine. Another thing, I do have some honorable mentions, so let's get started with the list, and let's start with those honorable mentions. Tenet is a movie that I wasn't really too keen on when I first saw it in theaters. I didn't think it was the big epic that Christopher Nolan and Warner Brothers were making it out to be. I was lost when I was watching it. I didn't care about the characters. It really took me until a rewatch, which is when I watched it a couple days ago when I got the 4K for Christmas, that I actually appreciated the movie a lot more. I still don't think the characters are good at all, but I was able to follow the story and I was able to wrap myself up into this world a lot more than I actually was able to in the theaters. And I think, I don't know, maybe I was just really tired that day when I saw this in theaters. Sometimes that happens, and I don't get as much enjoyment out of a movie as I feel like I should. Maybe that's why I liked it more on rewatch. I was watching it at home without subtitles. Onward was a movie that was released in theaters before the pandemic. They threw it on Disney Plus for families. I really love this movie. I think this is a very underrated Pixar movie. It's one of the ones that doesn't have as much critical acclaim. For me, it had such a strong message, including a brotherly bond, and I love the story that surrounded this movie. Mank came out on Netflix at the beginning of December, and it was about Herman J. Mankiewicz and how he wrote Citizen Kane. I love how this wasn't a conventional David Fincher film. It wasn't anything like we had seen Fincher do before. This was his passion project. It was a script written by his father that he really wanted to do, and I'm glad he got to make it because it's full of great performances as well. Kajillionaire is a really strange yet fresh and original heist movie that really took me by surprise with so many quirky characters and witty dialogue. I really did like this movie. I wanted to put it on my top 10, but there were just other movies that I liked more than Kajillionaire, but that doesn't take away from the impact that Kajillionaire had on me this year. Justice League Dark Apocalypse War is the best Justice League movie we have gotten to date. For an animated movie in the DC animated universe to be this good, this wrapped up an entire storyline that took place within that universe, that says a lot. And they did it in a very adequate way, an action-packed way, and it is a DC animated film that is rated R, so they went that extra mile. And it worked out perfectly. It needed that R rating. It justified that rating. Relic was a horror movie that was released earlier in the year, and I really loved the slow burn of this movie. The performances were really good. It just had that creepy, eerie atmosphere. Even though it felt like nothing was really going on throughout a majority of the movie, I still felt very tense and in a way creeped out as I was watching this, even though everything that unfolded really unfolds at the end. But I've started to learn to appreciate that about horror movies, because it just kind of proves that they're not just going for jump scares. They're trying to create something original and unique. Obviously, there's going to be some movies like that are going to end up on my worst of the year list. We'll get there. And last but not least on the honorable mentions is the one and only Ivan. This is a movie that really caught me by surprise. It was originally supposed to be released theatrically, and then they dumped it on Disney Plus during the pandemic, and I really like this. The photorealism beyond anything I could ever imagine. For a live action movie like this, the Lion King remake is an exception, but this movie moved me in more ways than I thought it was going to. I just thought that this was just going to be one of those random Disney, oh hey, family Disney night, watch the one and only Ivan. I thought it was just going to be one of those movies, and it actually had a lot more to say. Alright, so those are my honorable mentions for 2020. Now let's get into the actual list for the best movies of 2020. These are my 10 movies that I think are the best movies of the year. The ones that stuck with me the most. Not that the ones on the honorable mentions didn't, because I love those movies, but I just love these 10 movies more. So let's get started. in at number 10 is Guy Ritchie's The Gentleman. This is a return to form for Guy Ritchie. It's not afraid to be offensive, it's witty, it's funny, it's Guy Ritchie returning to his roots, and that is honestly where Guy Ritchie is at his best. When he is doing big budget blockbuster movies like Aladdin or King Arthur, he has proven, at least with the Sherlock Holmes movies, that he can do those, but they're not his strong suit. This is where his comfort zone is. And Colin Farrell in this movie gives one of my favorite performances of the year, and his character Coach, probably my favorite character of the year. Who knows? Number 9 is Sound of Metal. Sound of Metal just says a lot about hearing loss and how to cope with hearing loss. Not to mention, Riz Ahmed is phenomenal. If this dude does not get an Oscar nomination for Best Actor, just cancel the entire Academy. To go along with what it has to say about hearing loss and Riz Ahmed's brilliant performance, it also has impeccable sound design that is wonders to behold. It wrapped me in from the moment it began to the moment it ended. Palm Springs is number 8, and Palm Springs was released on Hulu. I really didn't know what to expect from this movie. I just knew it was an Andy Samberg movie, so I was like, alright, it's gonna be fun. It ended up being more than just fun. It ended up being really good. Andy Samberg is really good in this. He's got great chemistry with Kristen Milotti, who's also really good in this. I love how it just takes the whole time loop cliche, turns it on its heels, creates something fresh and original out of it. This would probably be like the perfect episode of Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Just take out Andy Samberg's character in this and replace him with his character Jake Peralta in Brooklyn Nine-Nine. It would make no difference. That's how much I love this movie, and I love Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Number 7 is a movie that I contemplated taking off of the list for the sole fact that it wasn't released in the United States yet. It was only released in the UK. It was supposed to be released in the United States, but because of the pandemic, A24 shifted around a lot of their release schedule. I don't even think it has a release date in the US anymore, but it is technically a 2020 movie since it did come out in the UK, and that is Saint Maud. Saint Maud is a fresh, original horror movie that has a lot to say about religion and has some gritty, grimy, eerie imagery that's going to stick with you for days. It's going to freak you out in more ways than one. I know that after watching it, I was just like, oh, don't want to watch it again. Number 6, Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. It is out on Netflix now. This is one of Chadwick Boseman's final movies. It's his final role, and he is phenomenal, as is everybody else in this movie. The set design, the costume design, production design, the music itself, everything just makes this movie feel alive. It gives it a sense of energy. And that's really what I loved about Ma Rainey, and rest in peace, Chadwick Boseman. He is by far the best part of this movie, but that's not to take anything away from Viola Davis, who is equally as great as him. Number 5 is Possessor. Possessor is going to freak a lot of people out. It is going to be one of those movies that a lot of people are going to have an aversion to because it is so brutal, bloody, violent, and graphic. All of those elements, though, are done in service of the story. The story could not be told without those elements, nor could it be told without expressing the themes that it is actually trying to get across. It's more than just a brutal, violent movie. It has something to say, especially about identity theft and moral choices that go into what would happen if somebody actually possessed your body or was using, like, brain implant technology to inhibit your body. A lot of thought goes into this script, and I got a lot out of this movie in that regard. It opened up questions that I felt satisfied in the end were answered. Coming in at number 4 is The Trial of the Chicago 7. The Trial of the Chicago 7 is another hit for Aaron Sorkin. This dude just knows his way around a courtroom drama, and everything surrounding this movie, the background, the acting, it's all top notch, and Sorkin does more than just direct. He writes this. He is doing a lot here. He's getting the best out of everybody. Like I said, I love the background and the politics behind this whole thing as to why this situation actually happened. It's really good. It feels like it was written as a play that just leaps off the stage and into the screen. That's what Aaron Sorkin just does so well with his movies. We got another Chadwick Boseman movie here. Another great performance from Chadwick Boseman. Number 3 is Da 5 Bloods. This is out on Netflix. Check it out if you haven't seen it. This is one that I'm really surprised with its IMDb score. It's got a 6.5 on IMDb. But it's got critical acclaim across the board, and it deserves all of that critical acclaim. I love this movie. Delroy Lindo, best performance of the year. Hands down saying it right now. Give him the Oscar. I love how it deals with people going through PTSD. I love how we get flashbacks that are filmed in film grain and a different aspect ratio. It gives the film a more old school wartime vibe and just one of those movies that feels like it was made in the 70s that relates to the political climate of today and to society today. Spike Lee is just brilliant. He always manages to craft a movie around things that are always on his mind. He's never afraid to talk about what's on his mind. And I love how that this is probably his most daring movie he's ever made. My number 2 of the year was number 1 for most of the year, and that is The Invisible Man. Anchored by a strong lead performance from Elizabeth Moss, this movie stood in that number 1 spot for as long as it did due to the sound design and the camera work alone. Not to mention, it takes its time to tell its story. It takes its time to get the audience to relate to these characters, to understand where these characters are coming from. This was a movie that I didn't think was going to be any good, and it totally shocked me. I think this is one of the movies that I gave a perfect score to this year. I gave it a 5 out of 5 on Letterboxd. I have to go back and watch my review, but if I did give it a grade in my review, I'm pretty sure I gave it a perfect score. If I gave it a 5 out of 5 on Letterboxd, it's got to be a perfect score. But I also gave another movie a perfect score this year, and that dethroned The Invisible Man as my favorite movie of the year. My number 1 pick for the best movie of 2020 is... It had to be Soul. Soul just... Man, Pixar... I don't know. Talking about Soul, I'm always just speechless because I'm just so blown away as to how Pixar just continues to warm our hearts with these heartfelt stories, how they are able to just come up with such original ideas. And it's such a shame that this movie was just dumped on Disney+. I really wish that it was just delayed to next year, or it had just come out in theaters this year, and they just took that hit financially, because this is definitely a movie that commands big screen presence. It has a lot to say about yourself and discovering yourself. All of these Pixar movies always have something to say. Always something that you probably have gone through in life. And it's a good message for both kids and adults who are struggling to find their way, which is why Pixar is so good at making their animated movies for both kids and adults. Everybody can love this movie. Everybody can relate to it. Soul is one of my favorite Pixar movies. It's probably my favorite Pixar movie in the last 3-4 years. I loved every minute of Soul. I cannot reiterate that enough. So those are my picks for the top 10 best movies of 2020. Leave your list down in the comments below if you agree or disagree with my list, or in honorable mentions. Feel free to disagree. Just do it in a respectful manner, please. I will have my worst of the year list coming very soon. I will also be doing a list of my most anticipated movies of 2021. I think you guys all know what my most anticipated movie of 2021 is. I don't know if that one's going to be numbered. I might just list off movies that I'm really excited for. I don't think I'm going to do a top 10 in that regard, but my worst of the year list is going to be a top 10. So stay tuned for that very soon. You guys are the best. Thank you for watching. My name is Alex Madden, and I'll see you at the movies somewhere.